Nothing is more terrifying than Nintendo.
Mario! Mario! Mario!
Okay, maybe not. But that's why it's so fun when there is a spooky moment in one of their games. I mean, obviously there's Eternal Darkness, which is owned by Nintendo, but for the sake of this list, I want to focus on games and brands where you wouldn't expect the creepiness. So here are 21 times Nintendo games were creepy as hell. First, we start with Mario. Spooky things don't usually happen to everybody's favorite plumber. I mean, outside of the ghost mansions, of course. That is, unless you count Mario Galaxy 2. Travel to Shiverburn Galaxy, look up, and you'll see it. A now infamous element of the level Skybox, these creepy alien creatures who just stand there, watching you the whole time. The whole time. But in looking into this further, they aren't just creepy aliens who watch you. Which, I mean, that's creepy enough. Case closed, we could move on for the sake of this listicle. No! YouTuber SwankyBox discovered that by comparing the distance of the Skybox and the size these are for you to be able to see them from so far away, these are giants, and the bigger one is 100 times the size of Mario. Granted, that's probably all due to the limitations of making a game and they're meant to appear closer. But just look at them! Giants or not, who doesn't get creeped out when someone or something is just watching you? Especially when it's a silhouette at night, which will tap right into your survival instinct. Why are they watching you? How many aliens are there? Are they just that impressed with Mario's incredible acrobatic ability? Because I consistently am. But let's continue that Mario flow we've got going on, and talk about Super Mario 3D Land. Here I have two surprisingly creepy things that you might just happen to stumble upon. And for this, I busted out my 3DS that I haven't played for years just to confirm these. I feel like my handhelds are always the first to gather dust, which is sad because there are some amazing gems on these. The first one is in the game's ghost houses. You see, if you wait around in World 4-4, a random humanoid ghost will slowly fade into view in the background and then fade out. Various sleuths discover that this ghost doesn't just appear in World 4-4, but also any ghost house really. It's just easier to spot in 4-4. And let me tell you, I hate ghosts. I hate them. Obviously, boos aren't scary, and that is what makes this Ghost of 3D Land so terrifying. It looks nothing like a boo. It looks nothing like anything else from the game, really. It's humanoid in form, and you may play the game without ever noticing that it appeared. Which are some of my favorite types of scares, because it adds the whole atmosphere of something being haunted and spooky, and you can sort of just feel that something's off, but you don't know what, and that makes it so much worse. And speaking of things you might never catch, next we go to World 1-3, wherein looking through a telescope will allow you to spot a mysterious UFO flyby. Now look, it's not like these are the most terrifying things ever, but similarly, you might never see it, and it could easily play into you wondering, hey, did I just see what I think I just saw? Was that a UFO? You look again, and it isn't there. It's not supposed to be there. I think that's my biggest fear, just you look one way, turn, and then look back, and something's all of a sudden there that's not supposed to be there, aka ghosts. Them, I hate them. Traveling back in time, we come to a classic, Mario 64. So travel to where else but the Haunted Mansion, and you'll find an innocuous room with no enemies and a piano. Not scary. That is, until you get close to the piano and it suddenly decides this is the perfect time to jump scare attack you, which, as a wee lad playing the then graphically amazing N64, was a terrifying experience. It is the perfect setup for a gotcha moment. Right when you think you're safe in the ghost house, you aren't. I feel like Super Paper Mario doesn't get the praise it deserves. Yes, it's no 1,000-year door, but it still has some great writing and a super cool concept with flipping the world from 2D to 3D and back and forth. But I digress. What we need to talk about is Mimi. Mimi is short for Mimic, and true to her name, Mimi can mimic other characters, which, when you think about it, sure, that's kind of scary. But what's truly frightening is when she suddenly decides to reveal her true form. Hope you aren't arachnophobic, because this comes out of nowhere. And it's not just the fact that she transforms into a spider, it's the way it happens. Her head slowly cracking as it eventually flips upside down, the long dangly spider legs shooting out of her body like a giant daddy long leg.
No thanks, bro.
Next, we come to Mario's brother Luigi and his mansion. The OG GameCube one. Luigi's mansion would seem like an obvious competitor for creepy moments. I mean, after all, this is a boss. But those things are obvious, and even though it's a horror game, the cartoony aspect makes it more charmingly horror than actually scary. But there is one thing you can find that has since gone down as notorious across the internet. Go to the top floor/attic, and you'll come across a room with a telephone. Pick it up, wait for lightning, and you'll see a shadow on the wall of Luigi hanging. Okay, he isn't really hanging. This is just a lighting placement goof where his model is off the ground because the light source seems to be coming from below the floor. But if you aren't aware of that, it can definitely look like he's hanging. And for a game that is about goofy scares and really what amounts to the Haunted Mansion ride of Nintendo games, for something truly dark to suddenly happen as a potential Easter egg, it is an unexpected bit of horror that happens at the perfect time right when you're walking through a creepy attic. And honestly, I kinda wish that's what was going on here. As much as I love Mario, there's another game series that has captured my heart that we need to talk about because there are some truly dark moments. Earthbound. See, you thought I was going to say Zelda because of the background, but we'll get to that. Earthbound is terrifying and has some insane moments, and I am so glad it was made for kids, because this stuff, I don't know, I guess I just like creepy things, hence why I'm making this video. First of all, there's Happy Happy Village. It has some weird ass music, which I'll be playing while I talk about this, and if you've ever seen Mob Psycho 100, the name will probably remind you of the LOL cult and the weird over happiness of the people there. In other words, don't trust people who act overly happy. Be cynical, like me. And wouldn't you know it, the Happy Happy Village is, of course, home to a cult. To me though, it's not so much the cult that's scary, it's just anytime a whole village of people are acting weirdly happy and overly nice, it just feels off, you know? I swear to God, I had a good childhood. This is a common horror thing. That should clue you into the fact that there are darker elements to Earthbound, which continually build throughout the game to the ending, which I'm about to spoil here. Basically, the plot of the game involves a meteorite crashing into Earth, which you and your neighbor, Pokey, investigate, that just happens to have an evil alien force on it called Gigas. By the end, it turns out your neighbor Pokey, who is a child by the way, has been aiding this evil force all along and gone completely insane, becoming whatever this thing is. Meanwhile, the iris of Gigas' eyeball is revealed to be your face. So yeah, the whole thing is entirely messed up. Okay, you knew it was coming. It's time for Zelda, and of course, Majora's Mask. I mean, Jesus Christ, the entire game has the moon staring you down with a menacingly evil face as it's on its way to destroy Clocktown, Termina, and the world at large. And beyond it looking terrifying and menacing, the citizens of the world let you know just how terrified and doomed they feel, both adding a tragic element to it and making it feel real. You have people retreating to the bar to drink their sorrows away, people petitioning the mayor to do something, lovers trying to find each other one last time before the world ends, and citizens going crazy. The whole game is doom, gloom, and dread as everyone is panicking about their impending doom. Majora's Mask makes you feel the horror of it. I mean, this game is just a non-stop barrage of creepy, messed up things. Which is also why it's still my favorite 3D Zelda game. The game opens up with you finding a sad-looking tree, which is heavily implied to be the Deku Butler's missing son, who the Skull Kid with Majora's Mask murdered. And you, who have become a Deku scrub in the opening of the game, had that child's soul in you. The most important song you learn in the game is the Song of Healing, taught to you by this guy, which gives you the ability to take the souls of other recently dead beings and inhabit their corporeal bodies as your own. So this game is just you surrounded by death. And I'm talking about permanent death in a children's video game. They never come back to life. Then there's the Elegy of Emptiness. Yeah, it makes this thing. This thing is so disturbing looking that it was a focal point behind the Ben Drowned creepypasta. This is also the game Tingle comes from, which really shouldn't be surprising in any way whatsoever. Next, Twilight Princess. First of all, Twilight Princess has these monstrosity chicken things called ukus, chickens with weird bald humanoid faces, glowing pink eyes, and giant nipples. I mean, basically half of the NPCs are creepy looking for like no reason. They just are. Yes, the central villain Zant is pretty creepy looking, but the NPCs are far creepier in my opinion. There's Fire and Falby, the clowns who hang out in Lake Hylia, and whose character design is a stark contrast to one of my favorite peaceful Zelda songs. They, I'm sure intentionally, look like middle-aged dudes who have decided to let their guts hang out and are wearing excessive clown lipstick. And who doesn't find that sort of thing weird and off-putting? And maybe even weirder, there's Giovanni. He sold his soul to become rich, and now he's a golden statue with rupee eyeballs and rupees stuffed down his pants. I definitely had a moment to pause the first time I ran into him, not just because of his character design, but because it caught me so off guard. And, of course, who could forget Mallow of Mallowmart, the business-savvy baby. And while I joke about it, all of this is weirdly charming to me because it's so odd, and part of why I actually prefer Twilight Princess over Ocarina of Time. Which, before you hate me too much, we need to talk about. Because Ocarina of Time was the first time we saw ReDeads in 3D, and after exiting the Temple of Time for the first time and discovering a destroyed Hyrule with these horrifying ReDeads who attach themselves to you everywhere, yeah, it was genuinely scary. To make matters worse, they scream before they attach themselves to you. These things made me hate running through future Hyrule. Oh, and let's not forget what lies in wait for you at the bottom of the well in Kakariko Village and in the Shadow Temple. This glorious monster, Dead Hand. It looks like it's straight out of a Junji Ito body horror manga, and if you pay attention, the walls and floors of the room it's in beneath the well are just skulls. Okay, so I've been talking about Zelda for quite a while now, but really Zelda is made for a slightly older audience. But you know what isn't? Pokemon. And I think you all know where I'm going with this one. Lavender Town. Lavender Town is home to the Pokemon Tower, which, rather than being a tower to the greatness of Pokemon, is just a giant graveyard for Pokemon, introducing death to a whole bunch of children. But what really made it stand out for so many was its creepy music. I like to imagine living in a JRPG town, and music just perpetually plays whenever you're outside, and people still choose to live in a town like this. Of course, that's not the only disconcerting thing to enter the Pokemon world. Pokemon Diamond and Pearl introduced the world to Drifloon, a balloon Pokemon. How cute, you might think to yourself, which makes you, yes, you, the perfect prey for Drifloon. From Pokemon Pearl's Pokédex entry, it tugs on the hands of children to steal them away. Heart Gold and Soul Silver say that it is whispered that any child who mistakes Drifloon for Balloon and holds onto it could wind up missing. Meanwhile, Pokemon Black and White 2 let us know that children holding them sometimes vanish, and Pokemon Sun states, stories go that it grabs the hands of small children and drags them away to the afterlife. It dislikes heavy children. Ah, stealing away and taking children to the afterlife. Truly bright and cheery like the Pokemon world. And speaking of games that would seem to be made for children, but have deceptively creepy moments, there's... I did that faux jump scare for a reason. As it turns out, the developers of Pikmin are big fans of jump scares, and in particular, in Pikmin 4. You have moments like the baldy long legs jumping down out of nowhere onto you, or even more horrifying, times you might just be relaxing by some chrysanthemums, when suddenly you realize it has eyeballs and is actually a giant frog-like creeping chrysanthemum that will attempt to ambush you. I imagine this is what a lot of real-life bugs with camouflage do to try and catch prey, and I don't like it. It's also accompanied by a horror piano cue. They knew what they were doing. Surely though, you'll be safe playing Animal Crossing, a game that's all about moving into a new town with cute anthropomorphic animal neighbors, right? Wrong. Saving properly was a big deal in earlier Animal Crossing games. In fact, if you forgot to save and turned off your game, you'd be visited by Mr. Rossetti, who yells at you for, resetting your game. Play Animal Crossing on the GameCube, and the only way you could travel to another town was by inserting another memory card with a different town into your GameCube, then traveling to that town via train. However, should you forget to save and just start up your game without technically traveling back, you can play with the data you left behind. You won't have any of your items or cash, as you took them with you, or, as it turns out, your face. So this is a creepy gyroid face that you now have. Congratulations! Booting up your game and seeing your own avatar look like this is pretty shocking. It looks like your soul has been sucked out of your body and this is just an Animal Crossing villager vessel moving to your commands. But that's not all. Next, we visit Animal Crossing New Leaf. Buy a TV and check in at exactly 3:33 a.m. to discover your TV doing this. An alien broadcast, which isn't creepy on its own, but the fact that it's at exactly 3:33 a.m., if you're playing in real time, like I do, genuinely that is late as hell, and you absolutely won't be expecting it. Plus, something about static TVs is just automatically creepy, so the fact that's incorporated into it just adds to the creep factor. Finally, we come to the game most of you have probably played, Animal Crossing New Horizons. Eventually, you'll be able to buy artwork for your museum from my favorite character, Red, primarily because I love foxes. The thing is, some of his artwork in New Horizons is haunted. Thanks to the internet, this quickly became known, and people would specifically seek out haunted paintings. But imagine you didn't know this, bought a painting, and suddenly, its eyes opened and closed. I remember when Star Fox first came out for the SNES, and how revolutionary it felt. Hell, even my dad, who wasn't a big gamer, was super interested in playing it. And while the final boss of Andros is kinda creepy, as it's just a giant face that you're fighting, really, it's not that bad. What is, though, is the secret zone. Take the bottom route and go to the asteroid level. You'll have to shoot and destroy a giant asteroid that you wouldn't think you can, and then fly directly into a bird that appears. This will take you to Out of This Dimension. General Pepper desperately asks where you are, as you have traveled beyond the communication of anyone you know. You are all alone in this hellish nightmare of a world while circus music plays. Which I think actually became more horrifying to me as an adult. I remember learning about this secret and going here as a kid, which was pretty exciting because it was new and different. But going beyond the weird trippy background that is messed up when you really think about it, and placing myself in that situation, it's General Pepper's message that actually spooks me the most. The fact that you're suddenly just missing forever in this awful, horrible dimension, and when you beat the boss of the stage, you're just perpetually stuck here with the message, the end. You never leave. Andros was better than this. I wish I stayed home. And that is all I have for you today. If there's anything you found creepy in Nintendo IPs that I missed, let me know. I know some people find the bosses of Kirby games creepy, but personally they never creeped me out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.